Welcome to Trash Talk MMA, the #1 podcast for news and insight that matters in the world of mixed martial arts. Brought to you live and unfiltered from all four corners of the globe by MMA aficionado, Antoine Peltier.
Hi everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Trash Talk MMA. I'm your host, Antoine Peltier. It's good to have you guys back. I'm in Paris right now, just packing up and getting ready to leave for a business seminar in London for 3 days to wrap up the month of January and then head off to Thailand on February 2nd. But before getting on the train, I have about an hour to kill, so I thought I'd give a preview of UFC 183. So UFC 183 is obviously a huge event because it features the long-awaited returns of two MMA superstars and legends, Anderson Silva and, of course, Nick Diaz. Now, these two are actually fighting each other on the card in the main event, and it'll be a fight at middleweight, which is Anderson Silva's natural weight class, and it'll be a weight class that Nick Diaz has fought at before, particularly in Strikeforce. But one that he hasn't fought in since he's been in the UFC. So it'll be interesting to see him go up in weight, especially since Anderson looks already pretty huge and is a big, he's a big 205er. So it'll be interesting to see how Nick Diaz coming up in weight and Anderson coming back from his gruesome leg injury will fare in this fight of MMA classic legends, man. It's a pretty interesting fight. If you haven't watched the Countdown episode made by the UFC, go check it out. These have been really good of late. I watched the Cormier-Jones one and liked it. This one for Diaz versus Silva is intriguing, and they always put together a nice little piece for that to get you warmed up before the event actually happens. So what's interesting with UFC 183 is it's actually a card that hasn't been plagued by injuries. To my memory, I can't recall any fight actually having been canceled for this card, which is nice. It's difficult for the promoter to put together a compelling card when every other week somebody seems to be dropping off the face of the map. So no fights were actually canceled for this fight, but some interesting fights that were canceled for previous cards are making their way onto this, most notably a flyweight bout between Ian McCall and John Lineker that was originally booked for UFC Fight Night Shogun versus St. Preux. That fight was canceled on the day of the event as McCall was stricken with a blood infection, and the fight was later rescheduled for UFC 183. So the winner of that bout will likely receive a title shot against UFC flyweight champion Demetrius Johnson. Another bout that made its way onto this card that was previously canceled was Ed Herman and Derek Brunson, who were originally booked for UFC on Fox Dos Santos versus Miocic. That bout was canceled on the day of the event as Brunson was stricken with a stomach ailment, and the fight was also later scheduled for this event. Another notable thing about UFC 183 is that from top to bottom, it's a pretty damn fine card. A lot of noise has been made about the top three fights on this event. Obviously, Silva versus Diaz is huge. In the co-main event, there's Tyrone Woodley against Kevin Gastelum, who's looked incredible. And then there's going to be an exciting barn burner between Joe Lozon and Ali Quinta at lightweight. But, starting from the bottom of the card, without getting into every single fight, on the prelims, on the Fight Pass early prelims, there is a featherweight bout between Diego Brandao and Jimmy Hetz. I believe his name is pronounced Hetz or Heddies. Both of those guys like to stand and bang, and, Brandao has a lot to prove. Coming off of 2 losses, 2 TKO losses, the last one to Conor McGregor, and before that to Dustin Poirier. I think Brandao showed a lot of promise when he won the Ultimate Fighter 14, and if he wants to stay in the promotion, he'll need to put on a heck of a fight on Saturday. As far as Hetz is concerned, he's coming off a TKO loss to Dennis Bermudez at UFC 171, so both of these guys have their backs against the wall and need to put on a good performance and do everything they can to get the W. As far as making a pick is concerned, I'd say it's pretty much a coin toss. Both of these guys like to bring it, though, and will bring the best out of each other. I think it should be an exciting fight. We'll see who manages to impose his will on the other and take a step up the ladder. As far as how the fight's going to play out, it's probably no big mystery. Brandao's the more diverse fighter. He has 9 wins by knockout, 5 by submission, 4 by decision. Whereas of 11 wins, Hetz has 10 submissions. So, obviously, Hetz is going to want to get this fight to the ground and try to sub Brandao. Brandao will probably look to keep it on the feet and knock him out. Moving a bit further up in the prelims, there's obviously this flyweight fight between Ian McCall and John Lineker. Obviously a lot at stake there. A lot of people are saying that the winner of this could get a title shot. Ian McCall has looked good of late. He had a decision win over Brad Pickett in his last fight and a decision win over Iliardi Santos at UFC 163. Before that, he had a decision loss to Joseph Benavidez and, of course, a loss to Demetrius Johnson. So, Ian McCall wants this win badly. He wants another shot against Demetrius Johnson. I think he's got a good chance of getting it, but John Lineker is by no means any pushover. Lineker is coming off a win in his last fight against, don't quote me on the pronunciation here, Alptekin Ochkilic by TKO at UFC Fight Night, Cerrone versus Miller. And before that, took an L to Alibo Gautinov, who recently fought Demetrius Johnson in a title fight. So, Lineker's been plagued by making weight. He seems to have gotten that under control. Hopefully he's got it under control for this fight. He cleanly made weight the last time when he was supposed to fight Ian McCall when the fight was canceled. They both made weight. So, that's reassuring that he's looking good, because otherwise this guy's he's a knockout machine. Over on 24 wins, he's got 12 knockouts, 3 submissions, 8 decisions. So, Lineker's going to want to keep this standing and banging, whereas Ian McCall, he's pretty much ready to take it anywhere, knockouts, subs, decisions. But I think Lineker is going to want to keep the fight trading. Ian McCall might want to get it down to the ground. Lineker seems to have a lot of solid TKO wins of late. 4 out of his last 5 fights. So the guy's no pushover on the feet, and he looked fantastic in his last fight. I remember watching that one. As far as a prediction, hard call, man. It's a great matchup. Another great piece of matchmaking. I'd say it's another coin toss. May the best man win. If Lineker comes in real big, actually, I'm actually going to go on a limb here and say that Lineker's going to take this. He's going to take it by either by TKO or a dominant decision. McCall just seems so plagued by various issues in his personal life and in his health and with his injuries. I just think that Lineker is gonna come into this motivated. He's going to make weight and he's going to dominate. Now the next fight, a middleweight contest between Ed Herman and Derek Brunson. The fight isn't particularly relevant, but both guys like to stand and bang. Both guys tend to bring it. Eddie Herman more than Derek Brunson. I'd like to see Herman take this. Both the guys have been alternating wins and losses, and neither guy will ever really, probably be a contender or a top 5 middleweight. But I like Herman. He's always been around forever, and he always puts on great fights. Tough as nails, hits hard, barely ever taps, prefers to get put to sleep. Brunson, while he got that unanimous decision win over Lieben in his UFC debut, but he got TKO'd by Yoel Romero, who was just a beast. He beat the little-known Brian Houston by submission, and actually took out Lawrence Larkin at UFC 177 by decision. And I think that's a loss that prompted Larkin to drop down to welterweight, where he looked spectacular the other night, winning via TKO over John Howard in a very impressive win. As far as predictions goes, I'm just going to go with who I want to win, Ed Herman. I like the guy. Good fighter, entertaining competitor, has a cool look. Brunson just seems like a run-of-the-mill. Doesn't really stand out to me as having any particular charisma or fight style that brings anything particularly interesting to the table. Finally, in the last prelim of the night, there's an interesting women's bantamweight fight between perennial contender Miesha Tate and Sarah McMahon. So Miesha Tate is on a 2-fight winning streak. Nothing too impressive in either of those wins. A decision win over Rin Nakai and a decision win over Liz Carmouche. Before that, she suffered a grisly loss to Ronda Rousey, of course, in a title fight. And before that, got really beat up bad by Kat Zingano, who will be fighting Ronda Rousey next, incidentally. As far as Sarah McMahon's concerned, she won a split decision over Lauren Murphy in her return fight after losing as well pretty quickly and brutally to Ronda Rousey. I remember I was actually in Thailand training at Tiger Muay Thai when that happened. It didn't last long. About a minute into the fight, Rousey dropped her with a knee, and that was a wrap. I think that was actually Ronda Rousey's first TKO win. So a lot on the line for these two ladies. Obviously, the winner of it could potentially get another fight against either Ronda Rousey or Kat Zingano if Kat Zingano pulls off the upset win. But I think more importantly, they both need to sort of get out of the slump of these decision wins and these lackluster efforts and just put on a spectacular performance that gets them back in the good graces of the fans, more importantly. I think Miesha Tate hasn't had really an impressive victory in a while. And Sarah McMahon was really hyped going into the Ronda Rousey fight and fell up short there. So look for both of these girls to probably want to really bring it on Saturday night and pull out all the stops to impress everybody. As far as predictions go, I'm going to go with the toughness of Sarah McMahon on this one. I think she's the more composed fighter at this stage of her career. Miesha Tate seems I'm not going to say distracted. She obviously works her ass off. But Sarah McMahon has just been laying in the cut, and I think she's probably adding some tools to her toolbox and will bring some new facets to her game that are gonna really be to her advantage on Saturday night. So I'm going to say Sarah McMahon by either dominant decision or a second or third round TKO. So now advancing into the main card, this is going to be a nice first fight. Jordan Mein out of Canada versus Thiago Alves. So both of these guys are Muay Thai dynamos, love to stand and bang. Jordan Mein has had some fantastic fights. He had a whole bunch in Strikeforce where he was TKOing everybody and their mom. He lost a split decision, but a close one to Tyron Woodley while he was there. Then he got into the UFC. Got a few good, got some great wins there with a TKO over Dan Miller, a TKO over Mike Pyle. I mean, both of these guys tough as nails. Thiago Alves on his side, been very, very inactive. He only had one fight last year where he got a unanimous decision win over Seth Basinski. But before that, he hadn't fought since March 3 of 2012 in a surprising submission guillotine choke loss to Martin Kampmann. So Thiago Alves used to be top of the food chain. That culminated with his UFC 100 fight against George St. Pierre, where he came up short. I think Thiago Alves has a lot to prove. I think he still has a lot in him. He's still a young fighter, and he hasn't had a ton of fights, and a ton of wars. But it seems like he's been really plagued by injuries. He had that weird, some sort of brain tumor I remember hearing about that he had removed. So hopefully he's healthy, hopefully he's in shape, and hopefully he can bring us, as we like to say, the Thiago Alves of old, the old pit bull, and put on a great display against Jordan Mein. But I'm actually going to take Jordan Mein in this one. I'm Canadian, got to go with my boy, and he's been looking really good, and he has a lot of promise. So I'm going to say I'm going to predict that Jordan Mein's going to take this by TKO in either in round 2. In any event, it should be a barn burner and a great way to start off the pay-per-view with fireworks. In the second bout of the main card, there's an interesting middleweight fight between the resurging Thales Ladies and the always entertaining yet inconsistent Tim Boetsch. Thales Ladies is on an incredible fight streak right now. He's 7-0 and 10-1 in his last 11 fights. One sole loss against Matt Horwich in there. Known mainly as a submission fighter and for putting on one of the most boring fights ever in the history of title fights in the UFC against Anderson Silva, a fight that I'm sure him and Silva would like to forget. But known mainly as a submission fighter, Thales Ladies has actually been reeling off some nice KO wins. He knocked out Francis Carmont in his last fight, and he knocked out Trevor Smith in the fight before that. And then in previous fights before that, he decisioned Ed Herman, Tom Watson, got a submission win over Matt Horwich, a decision win over Jeremy Horn, and a submission win over Tor Trong. So, yeah, Thales Ladies is back, folks, and he's going to put Tim Boetsch through the ringer. I think Tim Boetsch got really lucky in his last fight. He was getting his ass handed to him by Brad Tavares, and in his hometown of Bangor, Maine, and somehow managed to pull out a one-punch knockout comeback win over Brad Tavares in that fight. So it was great to see him win in that fashion at home, but ultimately he didn't look very good in the fight. He looked inconsistent and he was getting battered. So good for him for getting the win. At least it keeps him in the UFC, keeps him relevant, keeps him in the rankings. But I think he's going to get taken down quickly and submitted quickly by Thales Ladies in similar fashion to how Luke Rockhold did it a few months ago. So yeah, my prediction will be that Tallest Ladies finishes this by submission in either the first or second round, and it should be a good scrap. In the third fight of the main card is where the real first barn burner should occur, with a great matchup between Joe Lauzon and Al Iaquinta at lightweight. So Joe Lauzon, he's been a bit inconsistent of late. He's 3-3. He's had 3 losses of those 6 matches, 2 decision losses, one to Michael Johnson, the other to Jim Miller, and of course a nasty head kick knockout to Anthony Pettis. But moving into his wins, in his last 3 wins, he submitted the durable and exciting Jamie Varner. He decisioned Matt Danzig, and he got a TKO via doctor stoppage against Michael Chiesa in his last fight in September. So, Joe Lauzon always puts on great fights, win or lose. Al Iaquinta has looked like a wrecking ball recently. I really like Iaquinta. He's looked great ever since he got into the UFC. And, he's got a win over Ryan Couture, Piotr Hallman, Kevin Lee, a TKO against Rodrigo Dam, and, a nasty TKO in his last fight back in November against Ross Pearson, where that was probably his best performance in the UFC as far as I'm concerned. 3 fights back, he had a Darce choke loss to Mitch Clark, but I don't think that really tarnishes his accomplishments of late. He's 5-1 and looked great in the fights that he has won. Trains with a great camp, the Matt Serra clique, and I think this one's Al Iaquinta's to take. Lauzon will bring it. He always does, and you can never count him out. And he's got a skill set that matches up well against Iaquinta's. But I think Iaquinta's on a roll right now, and it's his time, and he's going to take out Joe Lauzon by TKO in the second round. And then in what is going to be the first fight of the entire event that really has major ramifications in a very important division, there is the welterweight fight between Kelvin Gastelum and Tyrone Woodley. So Gastelum has looked just awesome since winning the Ultimate Fighter. He's undefeated at 10-0. His last fight, he had a vicious submission win over Jake Ellenberger. Before that, he had a decision win over Nico Masuke, a decision win over the resurging Rick Story. And of course, he beat, the heavier Uriah Hall in a split decision win to win the Ultimate Fighter 17 in the finale of that season. So Gastelum has looked just like a wrecking ball, man. He's out there to destroy everything in his path. And what I like about this fight is Tyrone Woodley's the same. Tyrone Woodley's been a little bit inconsistent since getting to the UFC, but man, whenever that guy takes a loss, it's not good for the guy who comes next. When he lost by KO to Nate Marquardt in July of 2012 in Strikeforce, he came back and viciously knocked out Jay Heron in 36 seconds in the UFC. After that, he lost in a split decision to Jake Shields, and then came back and had landed one of the most destructive knockout punches to Josh Koscheck in November of 2013. And then he TKO'd Carlos Condit with a bit of a knee injury controversy there. But hey, man, he made the injury happen by forcing the takedown to Condit. So the win's the win, and the TKO's a TKO. After that, he showed up pretty flat against Rory McDonald and lost a decision there. But then when he lost that, he came back and absolutely annihilated Dong Yoon Kim by TKO in just over a minute. And that was back in August of 2014. So this fight has obviously a lot of ramifications. Whoever wins this could get a title fight or be, at least in the top 3, top 4. So hard pick. I mean, both guys have looked great. Tyrone is certainly capable of handing Kelvin his first loss. I don't know, man. I don't know if Kelvin's biting off more than he can chew here. I wouldn't say he is. He's just looked so good, and he's undefeated. He's undefeated against great fighters. So to me, this one's a coin toss. Could be Kelvin's real coming out party against a real top guy, or it could be Tyrone continuing to establish himself as a force to be reckoned with at welterweight. Man, predictions. I'd like to see Kelvin Gastelum win. I don't know why. I just think this guy's a great fighter, great character, brings it every single time. So I'd like to see Kelvin win, but it's really hard to bet against Tyrone. If I had to put money down right here, right now, without even looking at the betting odds, I'd have to say Tyrone Woodley, actually. So we'll see what happens on fight night, but I'm going to say a hard-fought decision win for Tyrone Woodley. Then finally, in the fight we've all been waiting for, there will be the main event at middleweight between Anderson Silva and Nick Diaz. Dana White came out and said that if Anderson Silva wins, he'll probably be getting a title fight. I don't really agree with that. First of all, if Weidman beats Vitor Belfort in February, I don't really want to see Anderson Silva versus Chris Weidman yet. I'd like to see Anderson Silva, get a couple fights under his belt. I understand that, he's obviously a legend and the greatest fighter ever, or at least one of them. But, he's coming off of 2 stoppage losses to the champ. So, I think for him to beat Nick Diaz, who's a natural welterweight and who hasn't fought in 2 years and himself is coming off of 2 losses, I think that's a bit generous on behalf of the UFC. Obviously, it's a fight that would put asses in seats to see Weidman again against Silva, but I'd like to see Silva get this win if he needs it, and then get another win against a real top contender at middleweight to really earn his shot back. So yeah, Nick Diaz on the other hand, 2 losses. He hasn't fought since March 16th of 2013 when he lost to George St. Pierre, and before that he lost to Carlos Condit. But hey, Nick Diaz hasn't fought for a while, and I think it's probably going to do him a lot of good. He's probably rested up. He's probably got his body in great shape. He's probably been training like a maniac, and it brings a really interesting tool set to this fight. There's just a lot of questions going into this fight regarding the health of Anderson Silva, regarding the ring rust of Nick Diaz, regarding the him going up in weight, Silva coming back off of the first 2 back-to-back losses, and both by stoppage of his career. So lots of questions. I think the fight should be really interesting, but I just find it difficult to put money on Nick Diaz for this one as much as I like the guy. Anderson Silva is a big 185er. I don't think his leg injury is going to be an issue. I think he's going to come in there and, Diaz loves to come in and push the pace and get in a fighter's face. And that's the exact type of fight that Anderson Silva wins. He's a great counter puncher. I think Diaz is going to come in, try to play his game, and get picked apart by some vicious shots, the likes of which he's never taken before, and get put away by TKO by Anderson Silva, either in the first or second round. That being said, Diaz is one of the most durable guys in the sport, and maybe nothing will surprise him. Apparently, he's been training with some incredible K1 level kickboxers. Joe Schilling had an interview talking about how Diaz has just been training like a maniac, that he's in fantastic shape. He's been training 9 consecutive rounds against a fresh fighter every single round, each round 5 minutes, and has been performing fantastic after 9 rounds against a fresh fighter each time. So clearly Diaz is in shape. Clearly he's been training with the types of fighters that he needs to be training to prepare himself for a fantastic striker like Anderson Silva. So I don't think we should count him out. It's just almost always impossible to bet against Anderson Silva, except when he's fighting Chris Weidman. So I'm going to say TKO by Anderson Silva. But hey, based on the context and all these various circumstances and what-if scenarios, Nick Diaz could come in and play spoiler here and get the upset win. And if he does, I'll be the first one clapping and saying bravo. So there you have it. That's a wrap for my UFC 183 preview. If you like the show, please subscribe to it on iTunes. Please give me a 5-star rating. By doing so, it helps me rank higher and get my show in front of more listeners who, just like you, would like to hear a fresh perspective on the daily news and the events in the world of mixed martial arts. So please subscribe. Please give a 5-star rating. Check out the website, trashtalkmma.com. I'm on Twitter at trashtalkmma. I'm on Facebook at trashtalkmma. Just contact me. Let me know what I'm doing good. Let me know what I'm doing bad. Let me know what you'd like to hear, where you'd like me to go, who you'd like me to talk to, what you want to hear. I want this to be the people's show. So, looking forward to your feedback and your reviews, and looking forward to getting back to you guys soon with another great podcast. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Trash Talk MMA podcast. Be sure to visit trashtalkmma.com. And don't forget to follow Antoine on Twitter at Trash Talk MMA. Let us know you're listening. Use #TrashTalkMMA.